everybody, my name is Meg Treseder and I am the Adult Services Librarian at the A's Memorial Library. I have 4 books to talk with you about today, and I'll be using the typical rating system, 0 stars to 5 stars. 0, I hated it, 5, I loved it, and you have to read it. The first book is called In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware. Just to let you know, I don't have a lot of the books in person today because they're all checked out. Not a bad thing for us, but I'm sorry I don't actually have the book to show you. So I gave this one a 3-star rating. It was creepy. Oh my gosh, I was at home alone reading it and got totally creeped out on my own for the first half of the book. The second half, I figured out the mystery. It was no longer scary to me. So I think if you liked Girl on the Train, Before I Go to Sleep, and Gone Girl, you're going to like this one. Here's the premise. There's a young woman named Nora, and she's been invited to her kind of ex-best friend's, what they call in England, a hen do, and it's basically just a bachelorette party. So it's this weekend trip with her friends, and they rent this house for the weekend. And it's ultra modern, lots of glass and windows, and of course very isolated. And some strange things start to happen, and this is where the creep factor of course comes in. And she wakes up at one point in the story in a hospital room with some blood on her, having no idea what's of course transpired. So she has to figure out what's happened and who's responsible. It was creepy, like I mentioned. I figured it out way too soon, and you could drive a truck through these holes in the plot. I couldn't believe it. So I gave it 3 stars. I didn't love it, but it was still a compulsive read I wanted to get through. The next one is Everybody Rise by Stephanie Clifford. And this is about people who have money or are trying to get money in New York. And it's right before 2008 with the recession. So people are still making money hand over fist, the markets are just going up, and everybody's doing great. And it's about a girl who, her family has money, don't get me wrong. Her father's a successful lawyer, and they probably have a few million in the bank. But she has friends with 50 million in the bank. So there's money, then there's money, right? And so her mother is kind of this social climber, and she's always telling her, date the right guy, have the right friends, wear the right clothes. And she goes to this incredibly nice prep school and graduates from college and gets a job with a company called People Like Us. And it's kind of this Facebook-like site, but it's only for a very certain social strata. You have to have money and wealth and power to join. And so her job as she graduates and gets this new position is to recruit these people to join the website, of course, which means she has to befriend them. And as she's exposed to this lifestyle, before she kind of laugh at her mother and her machinations, behind closed doors and her manipulating her, she kind of just laugh at that mindset. Now she wants to be like these people. She wants that money and that wealth and that social status. So she racks up $65,000 worth of credit card debt, which just makes you cringe inside. And there were several cringe-inducing moments. She's constantly doing stuff that you just have to shake your head at. She lies, she cheats, she steals. She's duplicitous with her friends and her boyfriend. And I think to me, the success of the book hinges on whether or not she's sympathetic. And somehow she was through a lot of the book. Even if she's doing these boneheaded things, you still kind of root for her because she'll figure it out in the end. So it had good pacing, great characters, and I love any setting in New York. So the next book is Did You Ever Have a Family? Which, this happened to me again. I gave it about 3.5 stars, and now I'm giving it a 4. I think because it stayed with me and I could envision scenes from the book, and that's how I know, a book has impacted me. This book has gotten a crazy amount of buzz. Everybody's raving about it. It was longlisted for the Man Booker Prize and the National Book Award. And I really enjoyed it. I wasn't wowed by it, but I really did enjoy it. So there's a woman, and this is a very tragic beginning, but I'm not giving anything away. You'll find this out in the first few pages. There's a woman who has a daughter, and it's her wedding tomorrow, and there's a terrible accident. And this woman's daughter, the daughter's fiance, this woman's boyfriend and her ex-husband all die in this accident. So she's just completely broken, right? And she has to kind of pick up the pieces. And so to do so, she treks across the country to find her way to this motel, which is in the Pacific Northwest, kind of this coastal town. And because her daughter has written her a letter in the past from this place. Her daughter had gone there to meet her fiance's family. That's where he grew up. And her daughter was happy. So she goes there kind of just to find her daughter. And along the way, she of course meets people and the readers find out their stories. And that's fascinating. And I think, so what Bill does particularly well, the author, he's able to bring in characters that you think will just be kind of peripheral to the story, and then tie them in with the protagonist and the main story. But he makes their stories just as interesting. And I think he does this really well as he gets inside characters' heads, because some of them you're just thinking, would I ever do that? I mean, that just seems like just crazy what this person's doing. But he's able to make you sympathetic to them, and I think that takes true talent. Also, the writing is good. I think I was expecting some like profound meaning or some deep lessons on grief, and that comes through a little bit, not as much as I would have wanted maybe, but I did enjoy the book, and I think it is. It's a quiet, lovely read. It's not going to make you maybe happy, though I think it wasn't as sad as I expected. And that was also a nice surprise. All right, and that brings me to the last book, which I have to unabashedly rave about. I loved this book. It's called Make Me by Lee Child. I gave it 5 stars across the board. Lee Child is just a genius. And I know you guys probably all know about this book. It's not a surprise to you, but I have to talk about it because I loved it so much. So I think Lee Child is one of the best suspense writers writing today. And that's because he's written about Jack Reacher, who is just, well, I have a little bit of a crush on him, perhaps, a literary crush. He's just great. So the setting is a random town, I think it's Midwest, called Mother's Rest. And Jack gets off the train because, you know, he's kind of just this wanderer, and he goes to these random towns and solves mysteries that no one else can. So he ends up in this town, meets a woman who is she's a private investigator, and her colleague has gone missing. She can't find him. And so she has to kind of work the case that he was working to find him, and Jack starts to help her. I would say there's a little bit of a build-up. Not much happens in the first few chapters, but he's just always a pleasure to read because Lee Child can just plain write. Whether it's talking about the inner workings of Jack's mind or a plane taking off, he just knows how to write. The ending, I will warn you. Lee Child is not afraid to plumb the worst of humanity and human nature. He always has very dark subjects, I think, and this one is the same. So your skin will crawl and your heart will wrench, but the journey to get there is just so much fun because Jack is so great. So those are some of my books. I hope you get to read at least some of them and enjoy them as well. Thanks.